morning. This is the Minnesota Senate Taxes Committee. It is Wednesday, April 15th, and it is 8:37 a.m. Quorum is present. Members have the minutes from April 14th in their folders. Are there corrections or additions? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as presented. First bill on the calendar, or our agenda rather, is Senate File 4262. Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for hearing this bill and committee members for listening to it, and to all of these people who apparently care a great deal about a property tax workforce. It's great to have everybody here in Democracy Committed. Madam Chair, Senate File 4262 creates a task force to create recommendations to reduce the property tax burden facing the people of Minnesota. And I want to be clear at the inception that this is not navel-gazing or noodling about the question of property taxes so much as it is a task force deliberately, intentionally created to come up with solutions, not for property tax as a question, but for how to reduce them, given the burdens that we are seeing throughout Minnesota. To the bill itself, Madam Chair, Subdivision 1 establishes the goal of the task force, which is to create these recommendations for legislation that would reduce property taxes on homesteads. And at least one option must be with minimal general fund impact. Subdivision 2 requires that the task force examine different tools to reduce property taxes, including the homestead market value exclusion, property tax classification rates. Subdivision 3 establishes the membership of the task force with equal bipartisan representation from both chambers, the Commissioner of Revenue, as well as appointments from local government associations. Subdivision 4 says that the Commissioner of Revenue must convene this meeting and provide for how the task force will meet. Subdivision 5 says the report must be submitted by February 1st, 2027, and the Subdivision 6 expires the task force once that report is submitted. Madam Chair, this intervention is important because fewer issues are more top of mind than property taxes, not just in Greater Minnesota, but throughout the state. And the piecemeal approach that the legislature often takes to these issues has focused on a special benefit or exempting certain parcels. While such interventions can benefit some, they can cause challenges for others. And the lack of a holistic perspective can ignore innovative steps to fund our needs and make life more affordable at the same time. And to underscore again, Madam Chair and members, this is not simply a task force for the sake of task force. This is not punting so that we don't actually solve problems and instead we just look at them. We are doing our due diligence, rationally considering the problem and coming up with strategies to ameliorate it. Members, it's been a long time since we've had any systemic change to our property tax system. It's time we have the serious conversation. This bill stages that conversation. So thank you for considering it, Madam Chair.
Senator Putnam, this bill needs to go to Finance. However, and I'm sorry I did not make this request earlier, but task force, commission, so on, one of the guidelines there is that the report must include language for legislation. It's their job to do that. It is not the legislature's job to do that at that point. Ms. Pollack, is there a place where that language can be added here?
Madam Chair, I would defer to Mr. Sylvia.
Mr. Sylvia?
Madam Chair, I think the best place for that would be within Subdivision 5.
That's where I'm looking as well. Thank you.
Sure.
And could it come, Mr. Sylvia, after, on line 3.4, after the word report?
Madam Chair, I think perhaps even on line 3.7 after relevant, so the report must contain, which is current language, task force advisory recommendations and any additional information the task force deems relevant, including recommended legislation or something like that. If I could have a minute perhaps to draft something.
Senator Putnam will come back to your bill so that he can do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
What we have found, or what we're finding, is reports like this, they got sent to those committees and nothing happened to them. And they sat on the shelf. And And you know what happens to things that sit on the shelf.
I
They
do,
stay
Madam
there.
Chair.
So we'll come back to it. Are there any questions
Madam Chair,
or comments? And I see Mr. Jessen is on the witness list. Mr. Jessen?
Chair Rest, members of the committee, my name is Nathan Jessen.
Welcome to the committee.
I represent the Minnesota Inter-County Association. There's also a letter in your packets from Micah, League of Minnesota Cities and Association of Minnesota Counties in support. Senator Putnam did a great job talking about the need and timeliness of this. I wanted to talk about a few of the steps that we put into this language to make sure this doesn't end up being a strategic plan languishing on the shelf like you were talking about. First, the bipartisan representation from members to make sure that there's legislative buy-in for whatever recommendations they come back with to the legislature next year. Specific goals around homestead property tax relief to make sure that we don't end up just admiring the problem. And then examining which tools specifically would be best at making that happen, whether it's refunds, homestead market value exclusion, looking at classification rates and kind of comparing where we were 10 years ago and how the picture has changed to today. And finally, just making sure that what the task force delivers is practical with options that have a minimal general fund impact because we don't know what the budget picture will look like next year. Happy to stand for any questions.
Yeah. Are there questions or comments for Mr. Jessen? We're going to lay this bill temporarily aside. I'm going to do the next bill, and before the third bill, we'll take it from the table and add the requirement for legislative language.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Or statutory language, whatever you want to call it. Okay, thank you very much. Next bill is Senate File 4682.
Welcome to your committee, Madam Chair.
Thank you
We
very
have Senate
much.
File 4682. Please proceed with your testimony.
Yesterday, we had a bill that took a strange path to come to the tax committee, and today we have another bill doing the same thing, but for different reasons. During the interim, I had the pleasure of visiting the city of Blaine, and they went through the projects that they were proposing in the area that's on the handout in the that was in your packets. And it's not a sales tax. It is 3 other taxes that are involved that are part of this proposal. However, as the case may be, the local legislators have, or at least in the Senate, are remaining neutral on the bill because they otherwise would have a conflict of interest. And so I contacted the city and said if they would like the bill heard and acted on possibly, that I would author the bill on their behalf. And so that's that's why I'm sitting here as a lone author on the bill. And I'm going to leave the pitch for it, if you will, to the testifiers, as city manager and mayor. But what this bill does is there is a certain area that is defined, and I think there's a map. Let me see your thing here. You have this map in the handouts that the city wants to do some real intensive economic development activities there. And to fund it, they're looking at three separate taxes that in some instances, they wouldn't need to come to the legislature because they hadn't reached the maximum. But because they have, at least one, they needed special legislation. And they, if you look at the bill then, in section 1, it's the common, notwithstanding the fact that local governments can't have these kinds of taxes that are in excess of what is otherwise allowed. And so in subdivision 1, the city is permitted, and this is in this instance, without a referendum, to impose these taxes. Subdivision 2 are the definitions for this particular bill, particularly indicating that the word city means the city of Blaine, and that it defines the taxing area and what kind of tax is meant, or kinds of taxes that are meant by the word tax. In subdivision 3, a tax of not more than 3% of the gross receipts on all food and beverages within this zone is imposed after the city passes an ordinance. And it applies to restaurants or, quote, place of refreshment. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I think we'd know it if we saw it. So a restaurant or a place of refreshment that's inside that economic development area. And then on page 2, paragraph 2, there is a tax of not more than 3%. This is a lodging tax on the gross receipts from lodging on short term. This is not a rental lease for some apartment within that economic development zone. It is defined as less than 30 days and at establishments that have 50 or more rooms. And then paragraph 3, 3% of the gross receipts are of those establishments that are places of amusement or athletic events, once again, that is located within that taxing area. In section B, or paragraph B then, beginning at 213, the taxes must be imposed and then adjusted periodically so that the rates that are imposed produce revenue sufficient to finance the purposes described in subdivision 4. That may be a paragraph that before we bring the bill into the omnibus tax bill, that we put some sort of cap on that. It's not going to be left wide open. Then for the use of the revenues, the city must use them for the financing of the capital improvements that are there and to pay off the principal and the costs for design, et cetera, and then maintaining reserves for those purposes that are deemed reasonable and appropriate by the city. Subdivision 5 is the permission, the authority to issue bonds for the project, and the Commissioner of Revenue and the city may enter into an agreement as to their a mutual consent to that agreement for the state to collect the tax. And then in subdivision 7, they're allowed under this bill to collect the tax otherwise until 2055, and then there's an effective date, which is the day after the Blaine city government approves it. Mr. Chairman, the revenue estimate, obviously this is local taxes, so it is not, there's no impact or minimal impact, would never show up or would not show up in a revenue estimate for this bill, since they're all local taxes. And that lodging tax is the one that is doubled from 3% to 6%. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. If you would like to call on witnesses at this time, or if you have questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see any questions, so we will move to our testifiers. The Mayor of City of Blaine, Tim Sanders, if you could introduce yourself for the record and go ahead with your testimony. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tim Sanders. I have the privilege of being the mayor of the city of Blaine. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for your time here today and for meeting with us earlier, or I guess I should say later last fall, when we were able to walk through this important project with you. I also have our city manager, Eric Thorvig, here with us today to help answer any technical questions. But I want to thank all of you for your time and consideration here this morning. Thanks for giving this some attention. The city of Blaine, as the chair said, is seeking authority to establish a special taxing district geographically defined and confined to help further our robust entertainment and amenity-driven district in the heart of our city. Blaine is a wonderful and rapidly growing community. Blaine hosts the #2 reliever airport in the state, the Hennepin County Blaine Airport, and we are also the host city for the Minnesota Amateur Sports Commission's National Sports Center. Those two state facilities in the heart of our city represent about 1,400 acres. Again, this special district was geographically chosen in 2021. It was really a blighted industrial park. I think back 60, 70 years ago, nobody thought that anyone rational would live north of 105th Avenue in Blaine. But the North Metro is growing. The city of Blaine has progressed quite a bit. And as we looked at that and looked at the National Sports Center and their 4 to 5 million visitors that they bring in every single year into the state of Minnesota and into the city of Blaine, really is a very important facility, a state facility. And its success really is intertwined with the city of Blaine's success. And so the immediate proximity of the National Sports Center is really why we geographically chose this area to bring about the amenities, the entertainment experiences, the lodging, the food and beverage options that not only help support the National Sports Center, but help support all of the millions of sports tourists that come to our state and city each and every year. They bring very large events. This June, the National Sports Center is hosting many of the Special Olympics events here, which is very, very unique, very cool opportunity for our state. And then we host one of the world's largest soccer tournaments in the city of Blaine, the state of Minnesota. Very proud to do that. One of my favorite taglines of that tournament is where the world comes to play. And that's in the state of Minnesota and in the city of Blaine. And so we're really proud to be a host community for that, but that, again, intertwines our economy and our city really into being a sports and recreation community. Since this bill was introduced last year, the project has developed significantly. The horizontal construction was completed last year. We begin vertical construction in the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to work on this bill with the bill authors in both bodies and the chairs, and really look forward to your support. Again, we're just seeking permission for the authority to create a special taxing district that's geographically defined and confined to this district. Again, many of the outlined uses are in your handouts. Again, I want to thank all the members for your consideration. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. And up next, we have the city manager, Eric Thorvig. If you could introduce yourself for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Thorvig, City Manager with the City of Blaine. I also want to thank Chair Rest for authoring this bill for us and presenting it today. As the Mayor indicated, this is a very exciting project for the City of Blaine. I've been on their staff now for a little over 10 years in various roles, previously the Community Development Director, now the City Manager. And it's been a transformational project for myself to work on since I started with the City of Blaine. It's a transformational project for our city, our county, but for the state of Minnesota for many of the reasons that our mayor had indicated earlier. Blaine is a destination for not only residents in the state of Minnesota, but for the world. And this project provides new opportunities, amenities to allow people that are coming to our community to enjoy our community and stay here. And we're just very excited about the ability to present this bill to all of you today. And as the mayor indicated, I am here to assist with any technical questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thorvig. Any discussion, members? Madam Chair, any final comments? Nope. Okay, so this will be laid over for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it, members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that amendment ready?
I was just going to say that, Madam Chair. Yes, we have the amendment ready.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I move that Senate file, what's the number?
4262.
4262 be taken from the table.
Okay, Senate File 4262 is taken from the table.
You need it's a motion.
Motion to move Senate File 4262 from the table. Any discussion? Those in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, nay. Okay, 4262 is back on the table. Senator Putnam.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the A1 amendment, please.
Senator Putnam moves the A1 amendment.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, this reflects the language that we discussed so long ago, 15 minutes ago. And it basically inserts the language, draft legislation necessary to implement its recommendations after the word recommendations on page 3, line 6.
Mr. Chairman, it's actually an author's amendment.
Okay, so this is an author's amendment. Those in favor can say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The amendment is adopted. Senator Putnam, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, for checking this and making sure we did it right.
The motion is to pass as amended and be referred to the Committee on Finance.
So Chair Rest moves that the Senate File 4262 as amended be passed and referred to the Committee on Senate Finance. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion proceeds. We will now move to Senate File 4986.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 4986 is one of the proposals. is one of the, is one part of the legislature's attempts, which I believe are going to be successful. There's so many people who have been involved in looking at the state of healthcare in the state of Minnesota. Not only when we see organizations like UCare collapsing around us, but actions of the federal government, some of which, regardless of who is president, will probably not be undone. So the state of healthcare then becomes a responsibility, a moral responsibility, an obligation to make sure that healthcare, adequate healthcare, superb healthcare continues as a value expressed by the people of Minnesota through the legislature. One of the tools that is going to be used is a healthcare sales tax. It is not a ballpark tax. It is a healthcare sales tax. But the language in the law that allows us or brings us to the point of making this proposal comes from the statute in which a sales tax was imposed, once again, in a sense, very unusually, because even though 10 years earlier than what the 2006 bill passed, by the way, I did not, I haven't voted for any of them to date. I've always voted no because I felt they were flawed. And, but in 1998, that proposal, which I did support, turned the decision to the voters and made the imposition of that tax and the funding into a referendum. And in the House Taxes Committee, the proposal to make it a referendum failed by one vote. So 10 years later, 7 or 8 years later, when the proposal reemerged, it made the state impose the tax instead and did not send it to the voters for their approval. This bill does not require a referendum either, although it indeed is a local tax imposed on the consumers in Hennepin County. The original tax was 0.15 until recently. Recently that brings about $52 million. The proposal in this bill raises it to 0.25, which would be about $85 million if you take a look at the revenue estimate. This bill is not the panacea. It is not what is going to solve the issues dealing with the partial failure at this point of HCMC, of the challenges that are faced by North Memorial Hospital, and because it is in that same statute, it also provides a path forward for agreements to be made with caps on the amounts, with the improvements, the ongoing improvements of the ballpark. But the taxes here, the tax itself is a healthcare tax. It is not a tax, it is not a tax on the ballpark. A House member was quoted as saying, well, I don't think I support 1%, $340 million, $340 million a year. That's $1 billion within 3 years. Because when times are tough, people won't go to the ballpark, which brought to my mind immediately of how little understanding and misinformation about what it's going to take to stabilize our healthcare system in Minnesota. And it's not just HCMC, although particularly people on the committee, particularly Senator Dibble and myself, who have been serving as part of what I call the quartet, along with Senator Wickland and Senator Murphy, in dealing with what we're going to do in the short term, and then also what the long-term solutions are going to be. But this is just one part of it. Senator Dibble is going to be concentrating and is working now on governance issues going forward. And certainly Senator Wickland, Senator Murphy are understanding that this is, that this whole area is one that is facing us as a state. HCMC North may be a priority, a super priority of some of us. I mean, the North Memorial is in my legislative district, but also HCMC located in the heart of Minneapolis. So we look to, and we look to it, by the way, this is the third year running. The House would not agree to provisions for 2 years running now. I'm hoping they're going to agree to it this year to repurpose the tax into a healthcare tax, and that would be one part of the solution. Another important part of it, and I will go through the bill, it started out to be extremely complicated, and in working with counsel, we determined, or they advised me, that the purpose could be achieved without all the additional language that was in the bill. So you will see that in the DE amendment. And so I would also point out that unlike most sales taxes, and we'll see that in the local sales taxes that require a referendum in the tax bill that we've been hearing, 25 proposals so far. This is a tax that does not sunset. So if it were to last till 2059, it would, without any other legislative action, it would raise some $2.8 billion. So I hope people will be keeping that in mind, that this is an ongoing challenge for us. It is not a one and done, although some things need to be done sooner than others, so that these healthcare institutions, and not just MCMC or North, but also our rural hospitals that we know have some of the same challenges as the hospitals in Hennepin County. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I move the A6 amendment.
Chair Rest moves the A6 author's amendment. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The amendment is adopted, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So looking at section 1 of the A6 amendment, it specifies, the word authority there is specified as the qualifying government, and what is being referred to there is the ballpark authority. In Section 2, the county may authorize, just as in current law, funds for development and construction, but this time, not the ballpark, but improvements there, and also within the development area. In Section 3, one of the obligations or part of the agreement back in 2006 was that part of the proceeds had to go to youth sports and the library in a library system in Hennepin County. And there was a proviso, which is now stricken, that after each year of the debt service for that construction, but now it's just required that happens without reference to the target field. In some proposals in the last 2 years, $4 million was stricken, and $5 million was inserted. We're leaving it in this bill what current law provides, and that is an amount up to $4 million. It does not require the county to spend $4 million, but they may spend up to that amount. In Section 4, to the extent that the collections can pay for these things, the county must first of all distribute $21 million annually. This is now on 2.8 to a private nonprofit hospital that's in Hennepin County that is designated as a Level 1 adult trauma center. In the past, we have looked at whether that should be a percentage of the proceeds or an actual amount. That is being stated here as an actual amount. And in the other provisions of the law that we are not changing, for each one of these activities, the county may designate what inflator factor, assuming that there are going to be increased collections as there has been over the years. But the county may designate an inflator factor for this purpose. But for the way that the description is of the hospital, it can only apply to North Memorial, which is common in the way in which we do not name actual buildings for the most part. But it must be used in full for uncompensated care. That is a different requirement. In fact, that's available to the county for HCMC. They can practically use it for anything. There's not a requirement right off the top that it be used for uncompensated care, although one of the major public arguments that's been made of the burden and the overburden, even as it is our moral responsibility to take care of the health care needs of those who cannot pay for themselves or have anybody else pay in their stead. So so that deals with the Section 1, starting with line 2.8, and then the from those collections, the county must authorize by resolution appropriations to fund any or all of the following. And in a sense, when you say fund any or all, that could mean none. We know that's not likely, or in fact, it probably won't happen at all, but they can do the following things. They can provide for development, construction, improvement, equipment, county-owned or county-operated healthcare facilities. That is highly discretionary on the part of the county. They can use it to fund public infrastructure, to facilitate the development of the facilities that I just mentioned. They can use it for reserve for county-owned or county-operated healthcare facilities. And it's not until you get to number 4 that with regard to Hennepin County and HCMC is there mention for them of uncompensated care. But we know they got a big hit. They got a big hit with the failure of UCare. So the amount of uncompensated care is staggering. Otherwise, in number 5, they can use it for other purposes that were related to county-owned or county-operated healthcare facilities, including operating expenses where needed. Number 6, other purposes related to county public health services or priorities. Number 7, other county-identified services or programs, including housing programs that address health-related social needs. And then number 8, debt service on bonds authorized and issues under subdivision 9. So the maximum flexibility, I don't know what else could be added here, that to the discretionary authority from by Hennepin County. And I believe that is the right thing to do. If there are going to be governance issues or restrictions, they should come in the context, in my mind, of Senator Wickland's bill, which is going to be the state's contribution moving forward of state grants for healthcare facilities. And HCMC is definitely going to be a major factor in that, and that the governance group may decide that Hennepin County has too much discretion beyond uncompensated care and the maintenance, operation and maintenance of their buildings, current buildings, even as spending more money at a point may end up in additional efficiencies. So in Section 6, the county, starting at lines 3.32, the county may purchase by any number of means land rights, et cetera, in order to build these facilities that they deem necessary under the authority that's been given to them. Subdivision 7 is technical. Subdivision 8 is an expression of intent. Nowadays, we do not put purpose clauses in bills that come out of the Senate, but there is one here, and that is to fund the capital reserves and make capital improvements, and that's referring to the agreement from between the county and the representatives of the Twins organization. Those bonds have to be revenue bonds because they're for a private private entity. You cannot pledge the full faith and credit of the county for that purpose. However, going on to paragraph B, the county may provide money to finance all or part of the county-owned or county-operated healthcare facilities. May use it for establishing and funding any capital improvement reserves, and the county may also issue bonds to refund the bonds, which is a common practice in finance that we often encounter here, and it's because you can refund the bonds in order to get more favorable rates, et cetera. And so the debt that's talked about in there is pretty much boilerplate language that are in Chapter 475. Section 10 imposes a rate of 0.25, a quarter cent now, and the Department of Revenue estimates that at $85 million to start with if it had been imposed for the tax year 2025. So that's the most accurate information we can have. Then in Section 11 are the uses of the tax. And again, a lot of this is not new language because it is becoming a healthcare tax out of the statute that deals initially with the original purpose of the tax. And so in Section 11, the language to paying the costs and expenditures in this section, that's being deleted because it was referring to the, as I understand it, to the ballpark. Then it can make grants, again, for capital improvement expenditures and using the tax to make distributions to the private nonprofit hospital that is described in the first section. And after, in C, after the ballpark and a public infrastructure, the revenues not required for those expenditures are to be used. We usually use the word must there, but the original word was shall, that's being kept, to redeem or defease the bonds, and then prepay or establish reserves that are adequate to meet those future obligations. Section 12 is a reserve for those capital improvements. The last few years, at least in the last two, if not longer, the county has consistently proposed for their contribution to be $9 million. The initial contribution or payment, I guess payment is a better word because it's not a charitable contribution, and it should not be interpreted for that. But the payment for the capital expenditures would be a total of $15,526,000, of which the ballpark, the twins would pay $6,526,000, and this is up from what it started 3 years ago as being $9 million from the county and something like $4.5 million from payment from the twins, and that has increased now to more than a third, and so it stands now in this bill at $6,526,000, which was at least an agreement in principle, numbers that had been provided to me as as shortly as about, I don't know, a month ago. And then Section 13 is the effective date. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the bill, and I'm really looking forward to the testimony of the people who are so passionately, as am I, Senator Dibble, Senator Wickland, Senator Murphy, in making sure that these healthcare facilities, again, all over the state, hospitals in your communities, not just in Hennepin County. This is Hennepin County's part of, however, raising the money to serve that purpose. This is what Hennepin County taxpayers will be providing for these purposes. But Hennepin County Medical Center is a state asset. It benefits all of us, whether we live 10 miles from it or whether we live 200 miles from it, because it makes so many services available to anyone who comes to it. And that's its responsibility. North does the same as well, and also provides an extraordinary EMS system that, with a helicopter service and ambulance service to the people of Minnesota, and particularly to those who live north of the Twin Cities. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll move to testimony. We do have a lot of testifiers, so we'll try to move efficiently. What I'm going to do is just call names. If all three folks could come up as I'm calling them, and we'll go in order from there. So I have on the list first Jody Wetland, Charles Essler, and Joe Matthews. If you could all come up, and Ms. Wetland, you can introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony. I also want to direct members to the packet where you have the Hennepin Healthcare Financial Status slides for your review during this testimony. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, my name is Jody Wetland, and I am the Administrator for Hennepin County. Thank you to Senator Rest for authoring Senate File 4986 and for having us today to provide information to committee members on the financial status of Hennepin Healthcare and its flagship Hennepin County Medical Center. Joining me today, I have Joe Matthews, our Chief Financial Officer at Hennepin County, Charles Essler, Vice President of Finance at Hennepin Healthcare, and Dr. Tom Wyatt, Chair of Emergency Medicine at Hennepin Healthcare. Hennepin Healthcare is not a private or a for-profit health system. What makes Hennepin Healthcare unique is that it is structured around need, access, and mission for Minnesotans. Hennepin Healthcare has long experienced structural financial imbalance and has required county property tax revenue to support its operation. As a Level 1 trauma center for both adult and pediatric patients, Hennepin Healthcare provides the highest level of care for severely injured adults and children. This represents the most complex and expensive care in Minnesota. One major driver affecting the hospital's finances is uncompensated care. Effectively, the care hospitals provide for which they are not fully reimbursed. As you can see, uncompensated care is rapidly escalating, rising from $40 million in 2020 to $104 million in 2024, with growth expected to continue. In 2024, 24% of the uncompensated care costs come from outside Hennepin County. Approximately 75% of patients rely on public payers, Medicaid and Medicare, which do not reimburse at the cost of care. When combined with self-pay patients, more than 80% of all patients lack a viable payment source. Since the hospital has a much larger share of public payers, increases in uncompensated care add significant financial burden. It also means the hospital lacks the reserves of other health systems, making it especially vulnerable to any budget disruptions. Therefore, the impact of the end of the public health emergency, Change Healthcare incident and the UCare event had devastating impacts to Hennepin Healthcare's financials, requiring the county to provide backstop for Hennepin Healthcare's payroll beginning in January of 2026. Moving to the next slide, you can see that as a public safety net hospital, Hennepin Healthcare has 1.3 times more public pay program patients compared to safety net hospital peers across the country, and 2.4 times more than Minnesota Metro Health Systems. The high rate of Medicaid patients make the hospital especially vulnerable to change in Medicaid policy and eligibility. In light of the financial challenges, Hennepin Healthcare has taken short-term steps such as closing programs, reducing staff, freezing wages, and freezing hiring for newly created positions. These actions provide only temporary relief while a long-term solution is sought. Property taxes alone cannot meet the system's ongoing needs. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Charles Essler with Hennepin Healthcare.
Welcome, Mr. Essler. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
All right. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, my name is Charles Essler. I'm the Vice President of Finance at Hennepin Healthcare. And I want to expand on something that Ms. Wentland said. She mentioned an increase in uncompensated care from 2020 to 2024. Looking at the payer mix slide, so the bar graphs with the colors, excuse me, you can see that the rate of uncompensated care rose from 6% to 8% through 2024 in that time frame. That small percentage change approximates $60 million of lost revenue to the system for serving the same patients. This demonstrates how vulnerable our hospital is, even to the smallest disruptions. We anticipate volatility will worsen as HR 1 is fully implemented, given the Medicaid churn and increased reauthorization and community engagement requirements. We'll walk through some of the assumptions on the next slide. So the slide that has the lavender, the purple at the top, and the green at the bottom. The bottom three sections of this chart represent structural operating deficits that we face. Uncompensated care, equipment purchases, inflationary pressures. These all contribute to the challenge before we have HR 1 ramifications in the future. These are conservative estimates, and inflation for labor and medical supplies could exceed revenue growth by more than 2%. As Ms. Wentland mentioned, our inflationary increases on costs typically range from 5 to 8%. That can exceed 10% for drugs or other things. However, with our revenue only increases at 1-2%, particularly we have 75% governmental payers, public programs. That leaves a gap of about 2% each year that we believe that we have to solve, and that is conservative. Equipment purchases listed here replace the medical equipment, the CTs, the MRIs, and IT infrastructure, and that would be approximately $50 million annually for a healthcare system of our size. A shortage of cash over the past several years from multiple incidents has made this extremely difficult and have pent-up demand. This slide also represents our best estimates of an impact on Medicaid changes to Hennepin Healthcare. There are projections that were developed using the Minnesota Hospital Association's and DHS estimates, and then we applied our percentage to the total for pro rata impact. The total, the top two, the purple sections, so the top is the light lavender and then the dark is the directed payments. They start to phase out directed payments as an enhanced payment to us through Medicaid. They start to phase out in 2028 at 10% a year, and then they'll be completely phased out in 2038. And the light purple represents the Medicaid disenrollment and the churn and eligibility churn that we'll anticipate through that same time frame. We estimate that the total of that purple over the time frame reflected approximates $1.7 billion of lost revenue to the hospital in those periods. As this reflects, HHS has operational challenges before HR 1 ramifications or impacts. And Stability now will provide time so that to be able to plan strategically and address future operational concerns. Hennepin Healthcare is making operational changes to maximize productivity and focus on our core mission in order to be financially viable. HHS will continue the hard work of analyzing its services, coordinating with the greater healthcare community, and to provide specialty care and continue to deliver care to our patients. New revenue now gives HHS the runway to implement items to achieve those savings in an organized and strategic manner. It also gives staff and patients at HHS the needed security so that we can recruit and we can retain and we can plan and we can be thriving in the future, not just surviving, and a great place to continue to receive the best care with exceptional care without exception. And next, I will turn it over to Mr. Joe Matthews.
Welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm Joe Matthews. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Hennepin County. The slide that you're looking at represents the Hennepin County contributions to HHS for their capital. As some may be already aware, Hennepin County has owned HHS, Hennepin Healthcare System, which includes HCMC, since 1964, and we own both the ground and the buildings on that property and are responsible for maintaining those and providing the resources to keep them operating. The campus covers more than 4 million square feet. It covers about 8 city blocks and requires ongoing repairs to mechanical, electrical, and building systems, which takes about $25 to $30 million per year just to keep the current infrastructure functioning. Much of the campus is aging. Some of the buildings are close to 100 years old. Most are at least 50. There is one new building from 2015, 2016, which would be the specialty care clinic, which if you're familiar with the campus, you would notice. In the last 16 months, HHS has experienced over 80 catastrophic events that include flooding, HVAC failure, pipe breaks, and those events are expensive to repair, and they also disrupt care to our patients. As we look ahead, there's going to be significant capital investments that are necessary to continue to offer excellent care and safe and functional facilities to align with current medical technology and to maintain our accreditation standards. In some cases, the outdated buildings may need to be consolidated in order to decrease the overall costs of maintaining them and improve the efficiencies and allow for modern healthcare spaces and services. Hennepin County has proposed, as Senator Rest mentioned, a 1% sales tax in part because of the size and the scale of what is needed and because the sales tax has been a reliable revenue source over time. Sufficient sales tax revenue would allow Hennepin County to help address these issues in addition to the operating costs. I do just want to highlight for the committee, over the last 10 years, Hennepin County property taxpayers, which is how we pay for capital, have paid $265 million towards the campus. Over the next 5 years, we estimate that about $310 to $375 million will be needed just to maintain the existing facilities. And so those are challenges that will continue to mount into the future, and that's part of the reason why the county is reaching out for assistance and permission to impose some local taxes or to receive some tax revenues in order to help offset those costs and not have those borne solely by our property taxpayers.
Dr. Tom Wyatt, if you could introduce yourself and please proceed with your testimony. Thanks for being here.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have some witnesses who have time constraints.
Yes.
I request that you ask Trevor Swallish to
Okay.
testify at this time.
Certainly. Yep.
Thank you.
So we'll have you come back up, but right now we'll have Tom Wallish. Sawallish, if you could come up and provide your testimony, and then we'll proceed with the hearing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and good morning to the committee. Thank you again to Chair Rest for bringing this important topic forward. Dr. Gibson will talk a little bit more about the, first of all, Trevor Swallish. I have the privilege of serving as the CEO for North Memorial Health. Dr. Gibson will be up. He's the leader of our trauma program at North Memorial. He'll talk a little bit more about the care that we provide, but I want to speak to just the financial pressures that North Memorial is facing. Very very similar to Hennepin County Medical Center in a lot of ways. We have included in your packet some information about the overall health of North Memorial, partially because we've spent a lot of time talking about uncompensated care, but obviously it is hard to boil down financial pressures facing North just with a single metric. I can guarantee that the issues that we've been facing are persistent and cumulative and projected to intensify over this next several years, as are HCMCs. And we want to make sure that you had a full and complete picture of the things that we look at when we make decisions. In that packet is the information that we use every day. It is information that we use with our financial experts and consultants, and it's the information that the third-party rating agencies, which are key support for us, use to evaluate our organization. They drive our metrics, they drive our strategies, they drive our decisions about what services we can sustain over the long term. A few things that I would like to highlight. 75% of our patients at Robbinsdale Hospital are on government-sponsored insurance plans without health insurance. We are paid for those patients. We are paid below our costs. So that means nearly 3/4 of the patients that walk through our door, we do not get full reimbursement for our costs. We have seen, as HCMC described, a steep increase in uncompensated care and underpayment from government programs over the last 5 years. We will also see, as you will see in the packet, a significant erosion of our operating margin. In 2025, we had a negative operating margin at Robbinsdale Hospital of $50 million and a budgeted loss of nearly $40 million in 2026. The trajectory this year is showing that we're not even staying on pace to meet that optimistic budget of $40 million loss. Two long-term metrics that you can also see in the packet talk about our bond rating and our days cash on hand. And what I would just highlight is it shows a very clear and unambiguous trajectory for us that really represents, for us, a need to make decisions or find alternate funding for supporting the important mission that we serve. These metrics outline the current state, and while we are taking meaningful steps to improve that operating margin and create efficiencies over the last several years, they have resulted in real expense reductions and measurable improvements. The gains are increasingly not offset by the structural cost pressures we're also facing. And those are largely outside of our control. So while we are building in efficiencies, we're doing hard work to try and make sure that we can keep costs affordable for everybody. The cost pressures facing healthcare systems right now is truly outside of our control and far outpacing the speed with which we can make improvements. These include rising labor costs, pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, equipment, health insurance, our own health insurance for our own employees, as a matter of fact, and compliance requirements. And at the same time, reimbursement rates, especially as you well know, for government programs, has not in any way kept pace with those increasing costs. The challenges and headwinds are only mounting for healthcare providers, not just North, not just ACMC, all healthcare providers, but they are particularly hitting our safety net providers like HCMC and like North. Despite these headwinds, we continue to pursue strategies to improve, but there's only so much we can do. There's no way that we can cut ourselves out of this problem. Hospitals like North and Robbinsdale in particular, along with Hennepin County Medical Center, serve a very unique and essential role. As providers of level 1 trauma care and safety net services, we care for a disproportionate share of patients who are underinsured, uninsured, or covered by government programs. This mission is fundamental to Minnesota healthcare system. We are truly a vital part of the overall infrastructure for all of the state of Minnesota. But it also places us in a unique financial position and places us closer to the edge than other healthcare organizations. I want to thank again Senator Rest for bringing this important topic forward. Thank you to the committee for hearing the testimony. I'll leave you with two quick thoughts. First, HCMC and Robbinsdale are lifelines for real people, families who need emergency care, seniors managing chronic illness, patients who don't have the luxury of waiting or traveling further. That's why public funding really matters and why it's important that we have to recognize the strain on all hospitals, not just HCMC and North. Secondly, we can't ask taxpayers to carry this alone. As healthcare leaders, we have a responsibility to tighten where we can, cut what doesn't add value, and make care more affordable and keep care more affordable for all the members or all the citizens of the state of Minnesota. So we can keep our doors open, so we can keep showing up for the people that really rely on us, and not just this year, but over the long haul. Thank you again for your time and consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for being here. Up next, I'm going to call on Dr. John Gibson so we can get his testimony, and then we'll come back around to Dr. Tom Wyatt. Thank you so much for being here. If you could introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony about the importance of North Memorial. My name is John Gibson. I'm a trauma surgeon for North for 20 years. I've been the medical director for trauma there since 2011. As you know, North Memorial Health has 2 hospitals. We have the busiest baby hospital in Maple Grove, delivering about 6,000 babies a year. And then we have our flagship Robbinsdale Hospital, which is our level 1 trauma center. Minnesota's trauma system is a coordinated statewide network. It's designed to ensure that every resident in Minnesota, regardless of geography or ability to pay, has access to life-saving care at the most critical moments. At the center of the system are a very limited number of level 1 trauma centers, of which both Hennepin and North are members. Level 1 trauma centers have to be well-staffed. They represent the highest level of emergency medical capability. We are required to give immediate, around-the-clock access not only to trauma surgeons, but to all surgical specialties: orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, cardiovascular surgery, vascular surgery, emergency department. We have to have high-level infrastructure for radiology, a functioning blood bank. And this is not just Monday through Friday. This is every day, every minute, whether it's Sunday night at 5 o'clock, Christmas Eve, it's the Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the answer always has to be yes, no matter the injury. The Robbinsdale Level 1 Trauma Center plays a unique role in Minnesota. As you may not know, we have one of the largest private ambulance services in the country, over 105 ambulances, 9 helicopters, and we transport over 100,000 patients yearly in Minnesota. Over 124 hospitals send patients to us in the last 5 years to take care of the trauma patients. They send us these patients because those rural hospitals can't give the patients the care that they deserve. That's what level 1 trauma centers do. What do these patients look like? They look like your neighbors. Just this last Monday night, I was on trauma call. I took care of a young man that was working on his ATV, working on the clutch. It exploded. Shrapnel went into his face, punctured his cheek, his nose, the eye socket. He needed emergency facial reconstruction surgery services, and we had provided those. Later that night, a woman came in that had a slashing of her arm and no function in her hand. She, too, had to require surgical services with plastic surgery to repair tendons and a nerve. And that's just a Monday night. But that's what you get at level 1 trauma centers. You have all the services there, not only for the community right there, for us, that's North Minneapolis, Hennepin County, but also 2/3 of our patients are from the rural communities, just so you know that. So over the last 5 years, 15,000 trauma patients admitted, 5,000 of them have been from the rural communities. One of the most important things that we do at North, I believe, is pushing the level 1 trauma care out into the community. We educate hundreds of paramedics and EMTs, hundreds of nurses, medical students. With our partnership with the University of Minnesota, we're training the next generation of trauma surgeons and general surgeons, and we bring that out into the community. So when North Memorial helicopter lands and starts taking care of a trauma patient, that level 1 trauma care is right there at the scene. We start giving blood, we start giving medications, and so when the patients come to us and we receive them, they've already started getting the world-class care that's needed. One recent example of this was a young woman who was driving her car in a multi-car pileup, multiple fatalities at the scene. She was pregnant, she's hypotensive, so she's low blood pressure, she's bleeding. The ambulance services start taking care of her, bring her to our hospital. She immediately gets blood. She immediately gets evaluated in the trauma bay, and she's into the operating room. Both the mother and the baby survive with specialty services. That only happens at a level 1 trauma center. So thank you for the time. I appreciate you allowing me to tell you how important this is for us. Help us to keep doing our mission. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. Up next, we are going to bring back up Dr. Tom Wyatt. And on deck, we have Carrie Parman, and after that, Dr. Tom Masters. Please introduce yourself for the record, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Tom Wyatt, and I serve as Chair of Emergency Medicine at Hennepin Healthcare. I'm here to speak about how our ability to train in Minnesota's future healthcare workforce is now at risk in 3 areas: accreditation, recruitment, and retention. As an academic medical center, we pair clinical care with research to train and retain the next generation of physicians. That role is especially critical as Minnesota faces a growing rural physician shortage. I chose to train at Hennepin County Medical Center, and like more than 85% of the faculty who now practice at Hennepin, I made a deliberate choice to stay. People stay at Hennepin because of the mission, to care for anyone at any time and to teach in that environment. But we are now in a period of real instability. Like many healthcare systems, we face significant financial pressure. But as a safety net system, our margin for error is far smaller. We have already begun to lose people. Nearly 5% of our medical staff have resigned since January. To maintain level 1 trauma center accreditation, we must provide immediate access to highly specialized services, for example, neurosurgery, ophthalmology, interventional radiology, burn care, and more. These are not interchangeable roles. These are highly trained clinicians, and recruitment in these areas is difficult and can take years. If we lose even 1 or 2 essential physicians or advanced practice providers, we are not simply short-staffed. We risk our ability to maintain our level 1 trauma accreditation. That designation is not symbolic. It ensures that when the most critically injured patient, whether from Minneapolis or rural Minnesota, needs care, there is a place that is ready. Recruitment is also at risk. Imagine you're a young neurosurgeon who is building your career. After 15 years of education, college, medical school, and residency, you want to practice in a place that has long-term stability. Will you choose a job if you think your employer is not going to exist, even if you love the mission and the work? We train physicians from across the country. Residency and fellowship positions are contractually binding. When trainees match to a program, they commit for 3 to 8 years. If there is uncertainty about our stability, applicants will choose other programs. That impact is not immediate, it is delayed and prolonged. A single-week recruitment cycle can affect our workplace pipeline for nearly a decade. However, sustainable funding like a sales tax does support us through the ability to retain the specialized workforce required for high acuity care and our level 1 trauma status, the stability to maintain our training programs, which depend on experienced physicians, and critically, the runway to design a more sustainable future. Without that runway, we are forced into a cycle of reactive decisions, closing services, shrinking capacity, and losing talent, each step making recovery harder. The impact of that instability does not stay within our walls. It is felt across Minnesota. Hennepin Healthcare is a statewide resource, a level 1 trauma center for both adults and children, a major training site for Minnesota's physician workforce, a safety net provider for some of the most complex and vulnerable patients. When we lose capacity at HCMC, the entire system absorbs that strain, urban and rural alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wyatt. And up next, it sounds like we're going to hear from a patient. So we've heard from both medical centers. I'm looking forward to your testimony, Ms. Parman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can proceed with your testimony.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Carrie Parman, and I'm from the Mankato area. I'm here to share how Hennepin Healthcare had a profound and lasting impact on my family. It was midnight on a Saturday just over 1 month ago. My entire family was at the hyperbaric facility at Hennepin Healthcare. 7 of us, including 5 of my grandchildren, ages 8 months, 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old, were being treated for carbon monoxide poisoning. The rest of the family watched anxiously through portholes in the side of the hyperbaric chamber. Earlier that day, my children and their families had gathered from across southern Minnesota to celebrate my granddaughter's 3rd birthday at an indoor swimming pool where we were exposed to carbon monoxide. We realized something was wrong when my 5-year-old grandson passed out, and then my 8-month-old granddaughter also began having symptoms. They were treated by first responders and transported by ambulance to the local emergency room, where the entire family was evaluated and found to have elevated carbon monoxide levels. 5 of my grandkids, 1 of my sons, and I also had elevated cardiac enzyme levels, putting us at risk for long-term organ and neurologic damage. We urgently needed hyperbaric treatment. Fortunately, one of the few facilities in the country offering 24/7 emergency hyperbaric care is Hennepin Healthcare. The care we needed was just a 90-minute ambulance right away. Even late on a Saturday night, Dr. Masters and the hyperbaric team met us in the emergency room. They explained the process, answered our questions, personally escorted us to the hyperbaric unit. They took extra time with the kids, explaining the equipment and helping them feel safe and comfortable. Managing 5 young kids wearing high-flow oxygen hoods is no small feat, yet the staff rose to the occasion with remarkable patience and compassion and skill. Based on our blood levels, 4 of us required 2 additional hyperbaric treatments. Between these treatments, we were admitted for continued monitoring and care. Less than 24 hours after arriving at HCMC, we were able to be discharged to home. From the moment we arrived in the HCMC emergency department and throughout our hyperbaric treatment and inpatient stay, we were surrounded by compassion, expertise, and exceptional care. They didn't just treat us, they cared for us as a family. Because of Hennepin Healthcare, what could have been a tragedy was not. We're incredibly grateful, and we hope our story highlights just how vital it is to preserve and support programs like this for families all across Minnesota. Thank you for the opportunity to share our story.
Thank you for sharing it. Up next, we have Dr. Tom Masters, and on deck, I have Laura Sales and Michael Rainville. Please proceed with your testimony after introducing yourself. Thanks for being here.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Dr. Thomas Masters, and I'm the medical director of Hennepin Healthcare's Center for Undersea and Hyperbaric Medicine and an emergency room doctor. Hennepin Healthcare has been providing hyperbaric oxygen for patient care and research since 1964. We are one of the few institutions in the entire country providing 24/7 availability of hyperbaric oxygen for emergency patients and the only multi-chamber hyperbaric oxygen facility in the state and region used for 24/7 emergency treatment of critically ill patients. The closest comparable 24/7 emergency hyperbaric facilities are in Milwaukee or Salt Lake City. This is a specialized medical treatment during which patients breathe 100% oxygen inside a room that can be pressurized, which allows us to increase oxygen concentration in patients' tissues. Our chambers are large enough for 8 patients to receive treatment in one room and to care for patients who are in critical condition on a bed and connected to an IV. Hyperbaric oxygen helps effectively treat burns, certain types of life and limb-threatening infections, carbon monoxide poisonings, frostbites, and eye strokes. We also provide non-emergent care for radiation injury and non-healing wounds resulting from diabetes and are one of the busiest chambers in the country, delivering about 5,000 of these specialized treatments annually. We care for several hundred patients each year. In 2025, about 60% of the patients we saw were from outside of Hennepin County. Our highly skilled staff are certified hyperbaric technicians and nurses, and the physicians are board certified in emergency medicine and subspecialty certified in undersea and hyperbaric medicine. I came to Hennepin Healthcare for my fellowship training in undersea and hyperbaric medicine. I remember being in awe of the chamber. It would invite you all to come see for yourselves. It's still as impressive now as it was for me 12 years ago. When Carrie's family came in, it had already been a busy Saturday, having treated several patients, including a critical patient with a life-threatening infection. I got a call from a hospital in Greater Minnesota about a mass carbon monoxide incident in their emergency department. Incidents involving this many patients are uncommon, especially in children, but my mind immediately went to the mass casualty training scenario our simulation center had run with us a few months prior and thought, we're ready for this. I mobilized our team and coordinated with my emergency department and pediatric colleagues to prepare for the family's arrival and get them to the chamber as fast as possible, as timely treatment is critical in preventing long-term brain damage from carbon monoxide poisoning. When everyone arrived, the ED had already devoted several adjoining rooms to their care so the family could be together. From there, we quickly got everyone over to the chamber and safely treated. I know their special birthday didn't end like they would have wanted, but I hope they experienced world-class care we aim to deliver with compassion and dedication. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Masters. Up next, we have Laura Sales. After that, Michael Rainville, and on deck, Angie Skildum. Welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Laura Sales, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Attorney General's Office. Attorney General Ellison's schedule has kept him from being here today, so I'm reading this short statement on his behalf. Chair Rest, Ranking Minority Member Weber, Vice Chair Housechild, and members, thank you for hearing Senate File 4986. And thank you to Senator Rest as chief author, Senator Weber, and other members for signing on as co-authors. The physicians, nurses, health professionals, and staff at Hennepin County provide nationally leading services to our state, and I want to begin my remarks by thanking them. I join my voice with those who stress the importance of Hennepin County Medical Center as a statewide asset. Its name should not disguise the fact that 1/3 of admissions to HCMC come from outside Hennepin County, or that HCMC provides critical trauma services that serve the whole state and upper Midwest. Let me say clearly, Closing HCMC is not an option for Minnesota and cannot be an option. Every hospital in Minnesota benefits from HCMC because, as a safety net hospital, HCMC cares for patients and other hospitals don't have the expertise to care for. HCMC also relieves financial pressure off all other health systems in Minnesota because it treats everyone regardless of ability to pay. When I toured HCMC last week, one doctor said to me that the University Medical School can't do what it does without HCMC because 50% of University of Minnesota medical students, residents, and fellows train at HCMC. This means that every community in Minnesota is served by a physician trained at HCMC. We are here because HCMC's finances are the victim of a perfect storm, largely beyond its control or its ability to solve on its own. It stands to lose $1.7 billion over the next 10 years from federal cuts to the Affordable Care Act and Medicare, not to mention losses from UCare. For a hospital that already provides $100 million in uncompensated care a year, this is unsustainable. So we must act. One of the most important reasons we must act is to retain the extraordinary staff that provide and support care at this indispensable facility. We need a whole-of-community approach, not only to save HCMC, but to strengthen it. Hennepin County leaders have a central role to play, but other health systems, business leaders, researchers, labor unions, and above all, patients and staff must be engaged. My office and I intend to be a part of the solution as well. The legislature also has a critical role to play, and Senate File 4986 is a good start. I thank the authors again for their bipartisan work in bringing this bill forward, and I look forward to working with all parties to find a solution that will bring stability to this important institution, the people who work there, and the people who receive care there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've had a couple of folks that aren't here, so up next, we're going to move to Ms. Jess Tangen. Looking forward to hearing your testimony as a frontline healthcare worker in this work. Thank you so much.
Is it already on? Okay. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jess Tongen, and I am a lactation consultant at HCMC. I'm also a proud member of AFSCME Local 2474 and Council 5. Thank you for taking my testimony today. I am here to express AFSCME's support for Senate File 4986 as introduced, or any proposal that will raise enough revenue to keep HCMC open. I love my job, which I've held for over 12 years, and I would like to continue to serve the 2,200 people that come birth at our hospital every year. Every day, I work with patients that don't have anywhere else to go because our country's healthcare system only sees value in what can produce a profit. They deserve a better system that recognizes our collective responsibility to care for each other, even when there is no profit to be made. In the next 4.5 weeks, we need the legislature to find consensus on how to keep the most vital hospital in our safety net from closing its doors. To that end, we appreciate Senator Rest for authoring this bill, though we do not support the changes that A6 amendment would make to the sales tax proposal. We are thankful that we have an opportunity to provide input on the details of the bill. I fear that the amended bill won't protect HCMC enough to guarantee it will remain open. We support dedicating much of the increased sales tax revenue to HCMC, as well as maintaining the funding for Hennepin County libraries. We respectfully oppose spending the sales tax revenue on non-public uses if the rate isn't going to increase much. The Twins have already received $260 million taxpayer dollars to build their ballpark. They have received enough. The most challenging part of watching this process as a worker is that we don't get to know what the sticking points are in negotiations. We've been showing up, testifying, and meeting with the people who make these decisions, knowing that our jobs and our community are on the line. The 2,700 AFSCME workers at HCMC are counting on your support in our time of need. Please support Senate File 4986, increase the Hennepin County sales tax rate, and let us keep serving all Minnesotans, including those that other hospitals would rather leave behind. We are so proud to work where we do, and our patients deserve the legislature's prompt action. Thank you, Chair Rest and members.
Thank you so much. Up next, I have Mr. Adam Dunick. I believe he's, okay, there you are. Welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Tax Committee. My name is Adam Dunick. I'm the President and CEO of the Minneapolis Downtown Council, representing nearly 400 downtown employers, companies, and other stakeholders who are invested in the future prosperity of downtown Minneapolis. And I'm here because of the urgency of Hennepin Healthcare and the future of HCMC. It's an asset and a source of health, service, and vitality to downtown East and to Elliott Park. Not only is HCMC the largest employer in downtown Minneapolis at 7,000 employees strong, they're a committed community partner. HCMC is a training ground for doctors and healthcare professionals. You've heard testimony to that effect already, not just for our city or for Hennepin County, but for the entire upper Midwest. And for reasons related to business and community vitality, workforce and talent recruitment, tax-based stabilization, and preserving essential health services for the people of our city, our region, and our state, we must enact legislation that keeps HCMC intact and financially solvent. In addition to support for HCMC, the ballpark revenue component is also critical for the future of downtown Minneapolis. Just over the last 3 years, the downtown has attracted and hosted over 9 million event attendees. Nearly half of those event visits occur at either Target Field, US Bank Stadium, or the Target Center, supporting our sports teams. Support to capital maintenance for these facilities are a huge investment in our hospitality industry and into the economic impact that accompanies these visits. I want to thank Commissioner Lundy, Commissioner Conley, and the administration staff and the board for directly engaging in the business community actively in the last number of months on this important issue and to understand the dire situation we're in. And I also want to thank Chair Rest for her leadership on this bill and the Senate Tax Committee for all the work that you've done to think about the future of downtown Minneapolis, not only in this bill, but in other bills. So on behalf of the business community downtown, this is our top priority this spring. We plan to stay engaged on a solution, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Dan Kiley. On deck, we have Jake Johnson and Janelle Johnson Teely. Welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Kiley. I am the Chief Union Steward with the Hennepin County Association of Paramedics and EMTs. I proudly represent the 26 911 emergency medical dispatchers that serve Hennepin EMS and a part of the Hennepin County Association of Paramedics and EMTs. Our dispatchers serve a role that is truly unique and frankly not well understood by many compared to other EMS dispatch centers in the state. Our life-saving instructions give callers the crucial information they need before help even arrives, but we're also tasked with maintaining a statewide asset known as the West Metro Medical Resource Control Center, or West MRCC for short. And that's really where I want to focus on because this is a piece of the puzzle that most people don't see about the 911 system. The West MRCC is essentially the coordination hub for EMS across the region. We track hospital capacity in real time, communicate directly with ambulance crews, medevac helicopters, and coordinate care where patients are transported based on who can actually provide that care at that moment. When hospitals are full, when emergency departments are overwhelmed, or when multiple critical incidents are happening at once, we are the ones managing that flow. We're making sure patients just don't get transported, but the fact that they get transported to the right place. This isn't just dispatching calls. This is managing an entire flow of emergency medical care across the region in real time. And that responsibility doesn't stop at Minnesota's borders. I've heard multiple people say Hennepin County Medical Center is a statewide asset. I like to argue that it's an asset to the entire Midwest. The West MRCC helps coordinate care from patients coming in from North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, which is a roughly combined population of 15 million people. So when we talk about Hennepin EMS dispatch, we're not talking about a local service. We're talking about a regional and statewide asset that plays a critical role in how emergency care is delivered. And here's the reality we're facing. If Hennepin Healthcare loses funding or services are reduced, the system doesn't just get strained, it will break, and it will break rapidly to the likes we have never seen in this state. We will still answer every 911 call. That part doesn't change, but what changes is what we're able to do for people after that call. We start running out of places to send the patients. Hospitals will become overloaded and overrun. Transport times get longer, and the coordination we manage through the West MRCC becomes significantly more difficult. And when that happens, patient care suffers. It's that simple. If this system fails, it won't fail quietly. It will show up in longer response times and worse outcomes for patients. Well, I'm going to be blunt here. If Hennepin Healthcare closes due to a lack of funding, people will die. This isn't theoretical for us. Frontline workers see this every day, all the time. So the Hennepin County Association of Paramedics and EMTs supports any practical, sustainable solution that prevents the catastrophic loss of Hennepin Healthcare critical safety net. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kiley. Up next, we have Jake Johnson. On deck, we have Janelle Johnson-Teely, and after that, Becky Boland. And we have about 15 minutes left. I think we're going to be able to get through this. Really appreciate everybody's patience, and please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jake Johnson, and I've been a paramedic with Hennepin EMS for the past 3 years. There have been many testimonies on behalf of HCMC's importance as a safety net hospital, regional utility, and as a teaching hospital that supplies well-trained physicians to the Metro and Greater Minnesota. I'm here today to speak to HCMC's role in attracting and training new paramedics. Over the past several years, paramedic certifications have expired at an increasing rate while new certifications have decreased. To combat this worrying trend, Hennepin EMS developed a paramedic trainee program that hires and pays EMTs to go through a 10-month trainee program, 10-month full-time program with the expectation that they work for Hennepin EMS for at least 3 years upon graduation. I'm a graduate of Hennepin's second trainee class and have no plans of leaving. My father is a captain in the St. Paul Fire Department, and growing up, I planned on following in his footsteps. At the time, my awareness of ambulances was limited to what he told me, and he described them to me as puke buckets. I had no interest in working on an ambulance as a paramedic or EMT unless it meant a role at a fire department. I planned on using the Hennepin Paramedic Trainee Program to bolster my application to St. Paul Fire after completing the 3-year requirement. Within the first 2 weeks of class, I had changed my mind. Being paid to attend school is obviously an excellent way to get people in the door, and for many of my classmates, it was the only way for them to afford the education. My class was comprised of single moms, veterans, those making a late career change, people with student loan debt from a degree they don't use, and college dropouts like myself. Many paramedic mentors and future peers of mine expressed how jealous they were about the opportunity that I had as a paid paramedic trainee. Paramedics that received their education at community colleges or other programs talked about how nice it would have been to have all of their ambulance ride-alongs with the same preceptor, high-quality equipment, and ambulances. The paramedics that taught me had a vested interest in my education, as I would soon be their peer and possibly their partner. I hope to give back by becoming a preceptor myself and just attended my students' graduation from the 5th iteration of the very same trainee program that brought me to Hennepin. It is hard to overstate the impact that Hennepin EMS has had on my life and on my career. It was certainly not an easy program, but I am beyond grateful for the opportunity, and I can't imagine working anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Up next, we have Janelle Johnson-Teely. After that, Becky Boland, and then we have somebody online, I believe, as well. Welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Chair Rest, and committee members. My name is Janelle Johnson-Thiel. I have been a registered nurse at Hennepin County Medical Center for 19 years. I am a very proud patient of HCMC and a proud member of the Minnesota Nurses Association. Over 1,700 of my fellow union nurses call Hennepin Healthcare their workplace, and it is an honor to represent them as one of our union's 3 elected tri-chairs. On behalf of M&A, I'm testifying today in support of long-term sustainable funding for HCMC. HCMC is the safety net hospital for all Minnesotans and beyond. We are ready and open for care for anyone who walks through our doors. This includes the patient who waited too long, and because they didn't have good insurance or any insurance at all, they didn't seek preventative care, and now they're in our emergency department. We see patients who are transferred to HCMC because the case is too complex or too hard for other hospitals, urban and rural, to take on. We are not just the safety net for these patients, but a safety net for a mostly private healthcare delivery system that doesn't want to treat these patients. At HCMC, we are proud. It is our privilege and honor to care for these patients every day.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, would you inform the public that we do not allow videotaping in our committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, please, no photography or video recordings in the Senate Tax Committee. Please proceed with your testimony.
Sure. No, thank you. It is an honor and privilege to provide care to these patients every day. There is no backup plan for these patients. There's no extra capacity, not in the metro, not anywhere in Minnesota. If HCMC closes, our state safety net is gone. The consequences will be catastrophic, and they will be deadly. Our union is glad to have learned this week that there will be additional funding proposals put forward elsewhere here at the legislature in order to provide funding for HCMC, knowing that this legislation, Senate File 4986, as amended, is not the only solution currently in play here at the legislature, makes this bill continue to be something that we can support. However, we do wish there was a clearer prioritization for HCMC and healthcare in this bill, particularly given all the federal cuts coming to healthcare in the next year. M&A also hopes to continue to be engaged on the topic of hospital governance. With that, thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Up next, we have Becky Boland, and on deck virtually, we have Dr. Abhishek Thatlagutla. I hopefully pronounced that correctly. Welcome to the committee. If you can introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Becky Boland. I'm a resident of Minneapolis, and I'm testifying here today in support of Senate File 4986, because without the expertise and skill of Hennepin Healthcare, my now 16-year-old daughter and I would not be alive. As an older teenager growing up in southeastern Minnesota, I was devastated when my doctor told me I could never have kids. Upon moving to Minneapolis, I had heard repeatedly about the phenomenal care for women at Hennepin Healthcare, and I chose Dr. Virginia Lupo, Nurse Barb, and their team for my care. When I became pregnant at 29, their focus turned to keeping me safe amongst many complications. After I was hospitalized for the third time in the first couple weeks of knowing I was pregnant, together we developed a care plan involving weekly appointments, a PICC line, and a lot of medication. Seeing your care team weekly, it allows for not only great care and expertise, but for the true joy of knowing them beyond skilled providers. That's when the holy work of neighboring begins. At 18 weeks, I was diagnosed with a condition associated with trisomy 21, or Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, infections, fetal growth restriction, and intraamniotic bleeding. I was scared, and I still remember vividly the expertise and warmth of the nurses and doctors as we adjusted yet again our care plan. One week at an appointment after hearing Elsa's heartbeat, Dr. Lupo calmly told me I could tell anyone I was pregnant because we were going to deliver this baby. And if any of you have heard Dr. Virginia Lupo speak, you know her calm voice, full of authority and knowledge, is to be believed. After my scheduled and planned delivery did not go as expected, the medical team I had gotten the opportunity to know on a first-name basis was there with every single problem. Every time my daughter's heart stopped or my body did not respond to medication or progress through delivery. Finally, my miracle of a baby girl was born and off for her NICU exam. And then again, Dr. Lupo's care turned to me while she taught the next generation of residents how to be caring and supporting doctors while she stitched up my level 3 tears. I named my daughter Elsa Levon after my grandmother Levon, the most stubborn, courageous, and welcoming woman I know, the person who taught me about being fierce and how our United Methodist faith means inclusion, and grounded me in the values I now model. I am now the proud parent of a fierce, strong-willed, independent 16-year-old who teaches me more than I thought possible. She'd be here today, but she had a math test. My daughter and I are both alive thanks to Hennepin Healthcare, and I owe the astounding joy and privilege of being Elsa's mom to the phenomenal skill, expertise, and passion from the team members who followed their calling into medicine at Hennepin Healthcare, a regional and statewide resource for exceptional care. Thank you.
Thanks for telling your personal story, Ms. Boland. Up next, virtually, we have Dr. Thatlagutla. I believe you're there.
Hi, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
We can. If you could introduce yourself for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Abhishek Thatlagutla. I'm a family medicine resident at Hennepin County Medical Center and a member of CIR. I work primarily at the Whittier Clinic and within the hospital, and I'm here today because the current funding crisis is directly compromising our ability to provide care. In family medicine, our mission is prevention. However, our current budget cuts are undermining this foundation. We are losing essential ancillary staff, social workers, medical assistants, and care coordinators who provide the vital infrastructure for our most complex patients. With the remaining staff facing reduced hours, a growing barrier now stands between my patients and the care they desperately need. Without this support, access to care is severed. In my clinic, it is HCMC's uncompensated care program that allows many of my patients to afford their medications like insulin. A $20 insulin refill today prevents a $20,000 ICU stay in a month. When we lose the funding that supports these programs and the staff who run them, we aren't saving money. We're simply trading low-cost management today for high-cost crises tomorrow. And these patients don't just disappear, they default to our emergency department. Our ED is already paralyzed by a boarding crisis where patients wait in the hallways for days because no beds are available. Treating primary care needs in a level one trauma center delays care for every Minnesotan facing a stroke, a heart attack, or a car accident. We cannot treat the ED like a primary care clinic and expect it to function for true emergencies. The instability we see today threatens more than just immediate care. It threatens the future of our state's medical workforce. HCMC is the engine of Minnesota's physician pipeline, training more than half of all practicing physicians in the state. Repurposing the tax is an opportunity for proactive investment in the health of Minnesota rather than a reactive scramble that will fall short. Supporting this proposal is an investment in protecting our patients, stabilizing our emergency services, and securing the future of Minnesota's physicians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And with that, we were able to make it through all the testifiers. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Chair Rest.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly want to express my appreciation for all of the testimony. We have a big challenge in front of us in realizing and recommitting ourselves to what some of us believe is a basic right, and that is a right to health care. Health care throughout the state of Minnesota, certainly to HCMC and North Memorial and other safety net hospitals throughout the metropolitan area and greater Minnesota. This bill is one tool. It uses a regressive tax. It taxes the poor. The poor pay more by a percentage of their income when they pay sales tax than does any other cohort in the state of Minnesota. Be that as it may, this is one that we have before us that will allow, unlike most probably, state grants, which will come from progressive taxes, not regressive ones, not where the poor pay more. The poor should not be paying more to help the sick. They should not be paying more to help the sick. It should be based on progressive taxation where those who have more resources are expected to pay more, even when it is less of their own income. But what this bill allows that probably, again, will not be allowed in any state resources, it allows for HCMC to renew its buildings, to construct new ones at the proper time. It allows them full discretion on how they're going to use the money beyond the obligations that are spelled out in the bill. After that, it can be for any of those construction costs, anything that is related to health care, including including uncompensated care. But it's not number one on the list that was in the original bill. So I want us to keep that in mind about that. This kind of flexibility is not going to be in any other bill. And so we have to be very, very careful to make sure that the way in which we pay for it is not is not regressive. To expect $340 million annually to be paid for those purposes by Hennepin County taxpayers is just wrong. It is a state asset, and the revenues and the funds that are there to support it should come from state resources. We often ask, when we get into a discussion about who bears the burden of taxes, that we ask the rich, the better off, corporations, multinationals, we ask them to pay their fair share. I would ask everyone who testified today, what is the fair share of the poor? In a just society, what is the fair share of the poor? I don't believe it's going to be an easy answer for us, because we are doing it in this bill. We did it before. We do it with payroll taxes. We do it with sales taxes. The poor do pay. What is their fair share? We are going to, I'm very confident we're going to be successful in using this tool of Senate File 4986, but we're also going to be looking at state resources, whether they come from a multitude of taxes that would be represented by the current surplus we have, or if we believe, as I do, that we are never going back to a system where the state won't have a share itself in paying for the basic right of health care. We're not going back 20 years. We're moving into an age where state revenues, state taxpayers are going to be held accountable and have the opportunity to support health care for all of us in the state of Minnesota. And that comes from any number of factors that were very effectively detailed by the representatives from Hennepin County. So we continue to look to see the effects of the bill that Senator Wicklund is putting together, and hope that we find the correct place for Senate File 4986 to be included. I resisted mightily moving it from 0.15 to 0.25 because the 0.15 had already been established for the last 20 years. The poor were paying into that, as well as the rest of us in Hennepin County. But I was very, very reluctant to increase that share of a regressive tax. When we passed the tax bill in 2023, we raised $2 billion. $2 billion. Who did we tax? Not a single poor person, not a single person with a middle income. We taxed the rich, and we taxed corporations. That is where the state's obligation should rest, not on the backs of the poor by increasing sales taxes. But I do believe, and I'm committed to making sure that we are able to do that we can send HCMC and every other healthcare institution on the proper road of stabilization, even as we use a healthcare sales tax to be part of that answer and that solution. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I ask that you lay the bill over as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have Senator Dibble if would like to. Senator Dibble does have some remarks briefly, and then we'll lay the bill over. Senator Dibble.
I apologize, Madam Chair, I didn't mean to step on your final word. Just want to say a couple of quick things. First of all, thank you for this bill. Thank you for this hearing. It was just so important to have this conversation here in this committee. Thank you for mentioning the work that's going on in Health and Human Services Committee as well, just for those who are here and those who are listening. As you pointed out, this isn't the totality of the conversation and the effort to respond to what we need to do on behalf of HCMC and frankly North as well. I wanted just to especially thank those who put together the testimony for the personal stories that were brought to the table that really help us understand how crucial and important and frankly how fine and excellent the service is that's provided at HCMC. There's also this handout that Hennepin Healthcare provided that has 20-some stories, most of which come from individuals outside of Hennepin County. So I'm sure that our Republicans who aren't here in the room are actually watching our video live as we speak because they've got something more important to do outside of this room. So I'm glad they're watching. And we actually have Senator Weber here as a co-author of this bill, which is a great signal. I wanted to, as I've been working on my piece of this, I put together an inventory, and we heard a lot of the elements that in testimony, those things that HCMC does that have regional and statewide reach, but I just wanted to read it off in list form. I have a narrative that goes with each of these elements that talks about why these are so important and how they have regional and statewide reach, but I'll just read them off in list form. HCMC is an essential and indispensable public institution because of its role as a safety net hospital for the entirety of Minnesota, level 1 trauma care. It provides crucial emergency medical services and pre-hospital care leadership, including training for those professionals. It is an emergency and disaster response hub, which I grew to appreciate in my tour there recently. The Regional Burn Treatment Center we heard about, the hyperbaric medicine and advanced wound care we heard about. It has a very important poison treatment and medical toxicology center that serves the region and the state and even beyond our state. It's a statewide referral center because of its specialized medical centers, its ability to care for highly complex patients. We heard about the fact that it's a major teaching and training hospital, but it's also a very, very important medical research and innovation center. It provides crucial behavioral health and psychiatric services, and it's a foremost leader in public health and community clinics, including innovative access programs for underserved populations. It provides tremendous public health leadership, again, training in those professions as well. And in and of itself, it's an economic and workforce that's very, very important. We heard from some of the workers here. So for all of these reasons, it is in all of our self-interest to make sure that we support this institution going forward with the current crisis that it's facing, stabilize it, make sure that it can continue to pursue the excellence that it represents. And we need to take a look at the fundamentals about its governance, its ownership, its structure, and how the permanent sources of funding that stabilize it on into the future follow form and function there. So that's the piece that I'm working on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, and
Madam
thank
Chair.
you, Senator Dibble. All of the things that you mentioned are just a part of a long list of the benefits that we are receiving statewide, as you mentioned, from HCMC, other safety net hospitals, and we need to recognize and celebrate those institutions together as state assets. And I'm really looking forward, Senator Dibble, to your recommendations that you're working on with Senator Wickland and Senator Murphy and myself on how we can make the best steps forward to stabilizing a system that should not be in crisis, and that is one that we can make sure makes steps out of any kind of crisis to stabilizing health care for all of Minnesota. And thank you for your efforts. Mr. Chairman, now you may lay the bill over and then, as amended, and then adjourn the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for your testimony. With that, Senate File 4986 as amended is laid over for consideration.
And-
And we are adjourned.
There we go.